Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon relating to quality management in the built environment. So some of you may have recalled from last year when we introduced BS 99001. This is now an update on the progress of that and the discipline of quality management. So my name is Ian Richardson. I'm the sector lead for the built environment team at BSI, and I'll just run through some of the housekeeping for today. You can see that this is a listen-only webinar, and we will be recording it. And I believe a link to that recording will be sent to you afterwards, so you can share that with people too. Even though it's a listen-only webinar, we do encourage you to be interactive through our Q&A function. And towards the end, we will hold our Q&A session, as you'll see from what we're going to cover this morning at the conclusion of the presentation. So simply click the Q&A button on the side panel to post any questions you may have. If you do happen to have technical difficulties, it's a very hot day today, so please excuse all the speakers for melting in the sun. But if there are technical difficulties because of that, please submit that issue via the Q&A function. We'll try and help. And then, of course, afterwards, upon completion of our feedback survey, we send that link to the recording in due course. This is a CPD recognised webinar too. If you want to request your certificate via the feedback survey, please do so following the webinar. So just to introduce our speakers today, we have Geno Ibraev, Head of Assurance at Sir Robert McAlpine, and Dr. Krish Palmer, Quality Assurance Lead from the Construction Innovation Hub. And also later on during Q&A, we'll have John Adshead joining us, who is the chair of the construction steering group within the CQI. So first off, covering the 99001 aspect of the webinar, we have Gena joining us now. Gena is a member of the UK CQI Chartered Quality Institute. Hi there, Gena. Qualifications in occupational health and safety management, security management, and risk management. 17 years of international experience in construction and the energy sector. Gena is currently holding the role of Head of Assurance with Sir Robert McAlpine, Tier 1 construction contractor operating nationally in the UK. So Gena, I think you're going to talk us through the background and overview for 99001. Over to you.
Thank you, Ian, and hello everyone. I have the honour and the duty to represent a wide panel of professionals who have contributed to this standard over the course of the couple of past years. Just to set the background, for why BS 99001 came about to be. We obviously are very familiar with the requirements of ISO 9001, which is probably one of the most popular ISO standards internationally. However, we also all know as members of the industry that it simply does not really deliver the output that we all wish it delivered for us in construction. There was certainly an appetite in the industry to create something as a catalyst, as a stimulus for the industry to just get better and deliver better buildings. So what we have done as a committee working with BSI is to create a standard that specifies the requirements of ISO 9001 for the build sector in the UK. Just to be very, very clear, this standard is not in any way amending, substituting the requirements of 9001. It merely specifies those for the built environment sector. Just as my key points here are mentioning, so we all know that 9001 is a great generic standard, but the implementation, as many of you will know, at times failed to deliver on the requirements that the customer and the end users expect. 99001 will give you specific requirements in addition to generic requirements of 9 that will apply to the built environment sector. And just to mention that our industry is not the first one to do something like this, and we're following in the footsteps of aerospace and petrochemical in creating specifications of 9,000 for their specific industries. Right, key features of 99,001. Obviously, I would love to have focused on just the clauses where I personally contributed to in terms of text, but I have to give you a proper holistic overview of what's really the key values that 99,001 gives you. So first off, it does recognize the project nature of our industry, as opposed to continual cyclic process like manufacturing, which all of us in the quality profession are familiar with. So in the specific requirements set out in 99,001, you will see a lot of references to what does this generic requirement mean for a project. Yeah, it really brings those requirements to life for project teams, and I'll demonstrate that in my examples in a couple of next slides. The second big thing that it does is that it really aims at raising the bar. It does set out more detailed quality requirements. So organizations who adopt the standard will be required to do more, demonstrate more, as opposed to just the generic requirements of 9001. And it does draw a lot of bridges between quality management and sustainability, health, safety and well-being, business ethics, data management, security, subjects like that. And the thinking behind 99,001 also covers the whole cycle of a project. So it does not just drop off at completion handover. Yeah. Last but not least, this standard recognizes the multi-stakeholder nature of construction projects. Obviously, we all know that, well, 9001 is a fairly straightforward standard to implement when you're just looking at your organization, with processes and materials and supplies largely being within your control. Construction is different, yeah? So 99,001 recognizes that it spells out specific requirements to address those risks of our projects being really multi-stakeholder ventures between different suppliers, contractors, and clients. I want to give you, please don't get scared, there's just 3 slides, yeah, where I'm giving specific examples of specific requirements set out by 99,001 on top of the generic requirements of 9001. And this is something you can expect to see in the actual standard. So these are copy pastes from the actual standard, just to give you a flavor. I wanted to touch upon 3 very different clauses, and just to show you how 99 brings them to life. This is the kind of text you can expect in meeting the requirements of 9001. Top management shall ensure that a competent person is appointed as a management representative with oversight of quality for projects the organization is involved in or plans to be involved in. Yeah, and then a couple of very important points following this is that the organization shall clearly define the governance and support mechanisms between project roles and the wider organizational roles. Top management shall ensure that management representatives with oversight of quality has organizational freedom, unrestricted access to project leadership to resolve quality matters. An organization shall ensure that management representative with oversight of quality has the authority to pause operations in order for quality issues to be addressed. Yeah, I think you can clearly see how 99,001 requirements really strengthens the generic requirement of 9 when it comes to roles and responsibilities. Another organizational one is quality objectives. Yeah, here's a specific requirement that 99,001 sets out. In meeting the requirements of 9, the organization shall establish quality objectives for each project to reflect contractual and other requirements, including social, economic, environmental commitments. Yeah. This is really important, as we all know. So just to compare and contrast, where 9001 mandates that we set out quality objectives for the organization, which means that they can be at company level, 99 really makes you think, really makes you talk to your customers, talk to your supply chain, read the contract, and set quality objectives for the project. That is quite important. Last but not least, in the specific examples, moving down the standard, post-delivery activities. The organization shall consider collection analysis of operational data. That means predetermined information requirements, particularly about asset performance, reliability, lessons learned. The organization shall take appropriate action, including investigation reporting when issues are detected post-delivery. We shall ensure continued access to relevant information so that is available post-delivery. Again, this is an example where we collectively, customers, tier one contractors and supply chain, are bound to comply with these additional requirements, which really should take care of a lot of grief that a lot of us have experienced in post-delivery phase of a project lifecycle. So these are the specific requirements that you can expect in 29001. And there are specific requirements against nearly every clause of 9. Not against all of them. Some of them are left without additional commentary, but most of them have additional requirements like that. Where to start with this new standard? Obviously, first thing to start with will be to get yourself a copy, read it. My recommendation would be for senior professionals in the organization just to carry out a desktop gap analysis and a cost-benefit analysis, just to compare where your current operations are in comparison to these additional requirements. You know, how far would you need to go to be able to demonstrate compliance? And then this is something that I'm planning on doing in my organization. I'm planning to bring this new standard to the scope of the top management review, and see if there's any appetite to use this as a potential next step in continual improvement of my quality management system. I recommend everyone to consult with your customers, with your supply chain partners, with your JV partners, see if there's any combined interest and a common understanding, and if there is one, I would recommend identifying a pilot project and just test its implementation. And go get a certificate after that and reap the benefits of it by building stronger relationships and producing better built assets. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Genna. And as you say, quality management is all about making organizations perform for their stakeholders, and that's from improving products, services, systems, processes, to making sure that the whole organization is fit and effective, and hence 29001 in that pursuit of excellence. So appreciate the overview there. So we'll move on to the second of our presentations. This is from Dr. Krish Palmer, Quality Assurance Lead at Construction Innovation Hub. Hey there, Krish. Just as a brief intro into Krish, for most of his career, Krish has specialised in quality assurance. With a focus on problem solving and spotting inefficiencies, core strengths include process development, risk analysis and modelling. Started his career in the automotive sector, where he was introduced to advanced product quality planning, APQP, framework designed to improve the manufacturing process for automotive components, removing risk by adding in gateways for design, assessment, product testing, and verification. Hence the reason why I guess we've moved into that for construction product quality planning, Krish. So over to you to introduce that in a little more detail for us. Thank you.
Great, Ian, thank you very much. Really happy to be here today to talk about some of the tools that we've been working on and celebrate the launch of a quality management standard that's industry specific. I'll kick off. Right, so I wanted to talk about construction product quality planning, which is CPQP. And what it is a quality planning framework. It supports, it's really supporting new manufacturing-led approaches, plus, but it does work for a traditional approach as well. It's split up into 5 phases, from planning all the way to production launch. These 5 phases are really specific and structured in set ways. Phase 1 is all about planning, and it's all about understanding your customer requirements. It's all about how do you translate that to product design requirements. It's about understanding that relationship, and it's really about securing supply chain. And phase 2 and 3 is all about your design, considering the risk in your design, but also for manufacturing as well. If we're thinking about this new way of approaching the way we go about making our products in the construction industry, we really need to start thinking about manufacturing processes as well as design processes, and thinking about them together. That's why you can see it's concurrently, they both work together concurrently there. We have phase 4, which is all about validation, and that allows you to pass a few gateways to get to gate 5. So there are 5 gateways, and within total there are 34 deliverables that you need to pass successfully through. So to do that, there's an accompanying number of guidelines that support this CPQP process, and these support the different phases requiring the different requirements. So, for instance, phases 2 and 3 have failure mode effect and analysis requirements, and there are guidelines specifically to help you do that. There are templates in place to support that process, and additionally, I'll come on to this later about the training and the work we've done in industry to get that to that stage. And how do we facilitate all of this? We have an approval process. It's called the construction product approval process. It's effectively a handbook that allows you to see what you need to get through for each of these phases. Where's the documentation and the evidence to support this? So you're going to need, for such a framework that's so robust in terms of quality, you need some sort of audit or adaptable audit question and checklist criteria. And we've gone one step further, because really the future is about digitizing our ability to do this. If we're going to do all this good work and we're going to capture all this information, let's do it digitally. So we have a digital tool that accompanies that. And that's just a quick intro on CPQP. I could go on for a while, but we'll move on to some of the benefits, and let's think about what the industry is doing today, and let's try and focus on the BS 99001 as well. So CPQP is all about the work up front. Don't try and firefight later. Let's do the work up front. Let's understand what our risks are in our product, in our manufacturing, in our supply chain. Let's shift from this quality control and defect checking to quality assurance and defect prevention. We want to eliminate all of these things up front. And what does that do? It's helping. This is that drive towards this zero defect culture. And when we're looking at the standards, and what we're seeing is there's a constant theme that is coming about that you do the work up front. Really think about what risks what risks are inherent in your product, or what risks are you bringing into your product just purely from your manufacturing or design processes. Let's think about this. And one of the other key benefits, which I think really is a message that's going throughout the entire sector, let alone what's happening here today, is about communication. It's about bringing organizations together. It's about working with our manufacturers, with our suppliers, to actually communicate how do you go about this process. And why are we trying to do that? Because we need to cascade our quality requirements down. If you're creating a product that inevitably you'll be outsourcing a number of those components to create your product, then you have quality requirements, you have regulatory requirements that you need to adhere to, and this is the future that we're seeing. You need to have this structured way to do that, and these are the communications that need to happen, and this is what CPQP can do, and this is what we're seeing with the standards as well, pushing this relationship, pushing these boundaries that we're currently in at the moment. And these are stepping stones, and I think, again, this is a stepping stone in the right direction. Another benefit is really the digital transformation that we're going through, and I'll touch a bit more on this later, but really it's about having a source of accurate and trusted information. And how do you do that? It needs to be evidence-based. It needs to be validated or verified in some way, shape, or form. And again, this is aligns with with what we're seeing in the standards. And finally, I'd like to touch on, it's about cultural change. It's about a change. The standards themselves, the theme is really relevant throughout, where we need to approach the way we go about developing our assets differently. You know, we need to think about the consequences of not implementing these standards, and just thinking about the way we go about doing things. So I'd like to move on to how does this all fit together, really? Because the reform is happening all over the sector, and we're seeing this. So what we're seeing for the first time is the way the automotive and the aerospace sector go about manufacturing their products, and have done for quite some time. The construction industry is now doing that. We are now doing that, and what we should be smart. CPQP is all about lessons learned. It's all about looking at your past projects. At the end of CPQP, we're looking at future. What lessons have you learned from this project that you're going to apply to future projects? We should be doing the same now. These industries have been doing this for a long time. The processes and the standards that they adhere to, and the frameworks that they follow, is for good reason. You know, we should look into it, and we should see what we can do to adapt. And that's what we've done here with CPQP. Let's look at the Building Safety Act. You know, I think for me, there's two big parts to that also align with the standards today. That you have to demonstrate risk assessment and prevention, not just at design level, but at process level. And again, CPQP provides you with a way to do this. As long as the asset is live and the product is live, the core CPQP documents, so the risk assessment documents, the control plan documents to control that risk that we assess at design and process level, remain live documents. You know, and this is important when we start thinking about the lifetime of an asset. Those that might have developed these risk assessments and were initially the ones to populate this data might not be around for the retrofit for if we start thinking about lifetime of some of these built assets. So it's really important that we capture that piece of information. And secondly, the standards, the BS 99001 and the Building Safety Act and CPQP all say the same thing. We need to nominate key roles. We need to empower the right people to be able to, whatever guidelines we follow, whatever process we follow for quality, for health and safety, for de-risking our products, we need to empower some people. And this is what CPQP does. This is what the standards are showing, and this is what the Building Safety Act is saying. CPQP, you have to nominate two key roles for this process to work. And I'd love to go into it in a bit more detail, but I'll stop there. Maybe if there's a Q&A, we can talk about it there. And then I'd like to talk about the golden thread. And for me, it's about the digitization of information. But when you think about this, there are so many ways we can discuss. So many. How do you do it? What tool do you use? Is it one app that does it all? Is this broken down? Where's the synergy between all of this? But for me, like I said, this is a journey. You know, we're on this. These are the early steps of that journey. So for me, it's really important that we collect. Where's the risk assessment data? For me, that's the first thing. Where is that data? Can we digitize it? And then is it in a structured way? Is it somewhere that's identifiable, that's easily reachable? You know, these are really important for me now. You know, let's capture, so CPQP with its digital tool will capture all of that risk in a digital format, excuse me, and then allow you to, and the way that the app is managed is that it allows you to be able to pull that data, pull those reports, pull that evidence, pull those sign-offs, and that I think is for me more important now. And then the future state of, yeah, we can work on APIs and get this all to work together. But for me, that is quite important right now. And I'd like to just touch a bit more. Like I'm talking about the sector itself, and I'm talking about assurance, but CPQP really is part of a broader tool set that we're calling the assurance landscape, because CPQP will apply to new products or changes to or major changes to existing products. But we're on a transformational journey that has many aspects to it. So we're talking about building completely differently. We want to build in a way where we have standardized products, where you know we have multiple products across that are useful for multiple platforms. You know, we're going down this route of what we're calling kit of parts, and the platform rulebook is which is in its beta version right now and launched at the end of September, will help provide that. The work we've been doing, product validation and testing, you know, because we need to think about this. We can assure a product, we can assure any component, but we need to start thinking about the bigger picture. We need to start thinking about assuring our products and thinking about our verification and validation at system level, and not just that component. Start thinking about MMC and volumetric pods. How are we going about testing and validating these avenues? You know, this is all new. So again, we have guidance. We've been developing guidance on this. This is what we've been doing. This is what we're meant to be doing for the last 4 years with CIH. Let's touch on Grenfell and the Golden Thread and you know the Hackett report. And what we're seeing is we need change control. We can do all the good work of CPQP. We can put a quality planning framework in for new product introductions into our new product introduction systems. But what about during that life cycle? Where any change, we need a change control procedure, and what we're seeing is that change control procedure needs to be robust. It needs to be robust enough that we can apply this today. Today, with whatever existing buildings we have that are at risk, we need to apply change control. If there's going to be a fix, it should be fixed once. That fix shouldn't need a fix, basically. So so we have guidance on this. We've gone out with industry and engaged with them about what the requirements are for change control and first article inspection. You know, we want that third-party validation out there. We want to go and make sure that these processes that are all well and good, but we need to make sure that they are adhered to and followed correctly. So this is just some of the wider landscape of assurance, and that's the Construction Innovation Hub has been working on. And then I'd like to go on to, it's all about feasibility. It's all about, does this actually work? Can we actually do this? What is this possible? So I touched on we should look at other industries, and so let's just take the automotive industry or aerospace, for instance, and we take on their approach to so advanced product quality planning, and CPQP is an adaptation of that. We can't just start using the guidelines the way they do in this industry. There's over 30 years that they've developed to the state that they are now. And what we're seeing is that this is a journey. And the way we've gone about structuring the way we try and implement and test aspects of CPQP with not just those that I've highlighted here. The platform program is a massive collaboration of many members across the board. So there's a lot of people that should be labeled here, but I've just highlighted a few because it's showcasing the applicability of CPQP. We've gone out there and said, let's go ahead and let's try and implement this. Let's do some gap analysis. Let's think about your business needs. Let's think about the regulatory requirements. Let's think about what you need now. How do we take the right steps now to get one step closer to this assurance landscape? Because we can't just jump into it. And I just wanted to highlight here that we've had some great success with our partners. And just finally to touch on that, yeah, this is where, you know, I keep reading about cultural change and how does that happen? It's not the industry that has to happen. It's the movement. It's a movement, right? Cultural change, and that cultural change happens with people. It's one step. It's a group of people all taking one step at a time. And with BS 99001, the Building Safety Act, the suite of assurance tools that we're creating is all steps for this movement. And this is what I was hoping to share with you today. And I'm really proud to be part of, because I hope we're laying the foundations now for a safer build. That's it. I think I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Krish. And it clearly demonstrates, doesn't it, the depth of what this industry is now having to face, with challenges coming from all over the place. And of course, you touched on a very interesting point there with the journey. Other sectors are ahead of the built environment. They've been down this track before, aerospace being the one that we talked about, but also, automotive, petrochemical, also medical devices all have sector-specific derivatives of 9001 that have been around for quite some time. I think that's why we believe that we've just started that journey with 99001 for the built environment to try and help as a solution, or one solution for that. So thank you so much for that. So I believe that's the end of the presentation material. We have now a short Q&A with our expert panel. So Genna and Krish will join us now to cover a few more of your questions. Lots of questions submitted before the event, lots during, so thank you all for doing that. We're joined also by John Adshead. Hi there, John. John is chair, as I said, hello. So as I said at the start, John is chair of the Chartered Quality Institute Construction Special Interest Group. Just to give a bit of background on John, for those that don't know him, leading a compliance and audit team for a major construction organisation, long-standing professional with over 30 years of experience in the sector, worked his way up through various site management engineering roles before moving to the field of quality management. So that extensive experience in the deployment of 9001 and associated standards within the sector, and hands-on site experience. So John also chaired the BSI technical committee that developed 99001 and was with us right back into, I think we were talking about this before the webinar began. I think we concluded that discussions were beginning in January 2020 about the validity and the purpose of this standard and why it would be very necessary to have it, and then work beginning towards the end of 2020 through till very recently to produce the standard. So just before, guys, I hope you're okay, but just try and answer some of the very obvious questions that we've had before we perhaps pick a few up for you to help me with. But there was a question about whether the standard is still out for consultation or if it's available. It is actually published. It published yesterday. So incredible timing that we have a webinar the day after the standard published. It was almost as though we planned that, but a little late actually with publishing. It's slightly delayed. This standard took a bit longer to develop the standard than we would have liked to have hoped. But actually, we've touched on quite a lot of those challenges through the presentations. And I guess the first question that seems to be coming through, John, is how the standard 99001 aligns with things like we've had mention of the Building Safety Act, that was the Building Safety Bill while we were developing the standard, and then of course competency, big issue, and Krish mentioned golden thread. All of these, I think, even down to the sort of sustainability as well, bringing all of these things in, lots of challenges while we were drafting the standard. What's your take on how all of these things align and how people should approach lots of these challenges?
When we originally went into this and we sat down back in 2020, we were aware of all of these aspects that were coming up on the radar that were going to impact the industry. And that was part of the starting point in deciding that actually there was a need for a built environment specific version of 9001, partly to address some of the industry challenges that were coming up, because it wasn't just the Building Safety Act. We had also plenty of other things coming up with things like reverse VAT. We also had other issues with the IR35, public sector procurement, and a whole series of other challenges that were all arising at the same time, sort of culminating in we need to address all of these things. So part of the start point for the 99001 was we need to make sure these aspects that are specific to our sector, we need to pick them up in such a way that certification and standards that we're working to in the sector are appropriate. Now, we were aware of what was coming up with the Building Safety Act. We were reviewing the draft as they were coming through. So the documentation that was being put out by the government's working groups and the Grenfell Commission, we were actually referring to those documents along with other things as this developed. So we incorporated many of those aspects as we developed the 99001. Now, in developing a British standard, you can't make specific reference to particular legislation and the like, and direct linkage to, if you like. So we can't state it in there, but we're fully conversant of it, and we try to make sure that it figured in everything we considered and everything we added when we enhanced the requirements. So I would suggest that whilst it's not perfect, I think we've covered most of the bases, and in an old electrician's parlance, left a tail hanging out for future development as the, if you like, the legislative and statutory framework within the built environment sector develops.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is a bit of a, the goalposts are moving continually, but we have, to the best of our knowledge, tried to tackle that. And Genna, perhaps, you know, your experience over the last couple of years working with the committee as a committee member and trying to tackle this issue, what would your thoughts be on those various conundrums?
Well, as John said, we had to be very careful with the language that we're using. Yeah, obviously not to overlap and contradict with what would be, regulatory requirements or other standards. Yeah, so that's one. There should not be any contradictions. But most importantly, through various members of the committees, we were quite well aware of the thinking behind the Building Safety Bill, which is now the Building Safety Act, and the various PASs and other standards that that have been developed, along the same subject. So what I can certainly see is that the requirements set out in 99,001 will be instrumental for organizations to meet those new regulatory requirements. I will give one specific example where there's a sub-clause in identification and traceability in BS 99,001, which requires organizations to maintain unique identifiers for components which might have been otherwise obscured in component assemblies that end up in finished built assets. So complying with that will definitely contribute to be compliant with the golden thread of information requirement, for example. So they really go hand in hand. That's what I can say.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. And Krish, when we talk about the broader discipline of quality and assurance, also in your slides you reference golden thread. Is there a challenge coming that you foresee that quality and the standard and CPQP sort of bring that help into the built environment sector?
I do. I think there's three bits to this, but the first part is the alignment is about risk, potential risk, right? What's the potential risk? What are the failure modes? What have we done to mitigate this risk? What controls are in place? But when we start thinking about the golden thread, it's really about, you can capture this information. If you ask 20 companies to come up with this, there'll be 20 different reports, 20 different layouts, 20 different templates. We need standardization, right, of these templates. We need to first agree on what this is. If we're going to go down, which it doesn't matter what route it is, are we going down with a component list? Are we looking at each built asset as an individual asset? That is, for me, less important, but it's about where's the standardization of this, so that if you want someone to come along and then review that information, validate that, or understand, even worst case scenario, understand what went wrong, we need some sort of standardization. So it is 100%, we need to digitize this information, and we're already on that journey. I think it's clear everyone is on that journey, but then it's about, can we be smart about this again? Can we do it right? Can we do it right the first way? Obviously, it's a journey, so we're going to continue evolving, but let's try and set some of these foundations right. Let's think about some standardization that we can do. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, appreciate that. So no, that's great. Thank you so much for trying to cover a few questions in the next few minutes before we run out of time. And this, I guess, some of what you spoke about there leads us on to other questions. Implementation is a word that crops up a lot in the questions we've had. Implementation date, questions around implementation and scope, and then also what do you think the main challenges for implementation will be? So John, again, starting with you, the committee that wrote 99,001 have probably had similar feelings about this. The standard is now published and available for people to pick up and to start to use, but there is perhaps a need for additional guidance, and that's a discussion I think is taking place at the moment, is it not?
It is, yes. The committee that drafted this, there was a realisation when this standard was produced that there should be a guidance to implementation to support it. So that is something that the committee have literally just started to look at drafting, to try and provide some greater guidance as to how this can be implemented in the different disciplines and different stages of the project life cycle and business life cycle. So that work has begun because that was acknowledged early doors that we would need to do that once we develop the standard in order for the to cover the whole of the built environment sector, because it's quite a large sector.
Yeah, which is an important. That's an important point to raise, isn't it? The life cycle part.
Well, you're also looking at it's the diversity within the sector. So you're looking at civil engineering at one end of the equation, and then you're looking at house extensions at the other end of the equation, and everything in between. So it gets interpreted differently for the different circumstances. So we did acknowledge that you needed a standardized, taking in Chris's point about you need standardization, but it means something slightly differently, subtly different in different sectors. That's something that we're going to work on. And while I've got the opportunity, anyone out there listening, put your name in, send it in, because we're happy to accept volunteers to join us on that road.
Well, that's an important point, isn't it? And there's CIH were represented on the committee again, as sat there, represented. There's lots of tier 1 representation, but also again, I think when we talk about implementation and we talk about the life cycle stages of projects, I think there's a lot where perhaps people do need to know where to start, and you touched on it in your presentation. Is there anything more you can allude to about implementation for us, please?
Yes, thanks. I guess I'll answer that from a couple of angles. So angle one, which, something that immediately springs to mind, thinking for my own organization, is if I bring up the subject of, let's get compliant with this new standard, top management is going to turn around and say, so what's in it for me? We've got cost of quality management is high enough. So my answer to that would be, first, that you'll have to do this anyway, because when you change a regulatory environment, because of the rising expectations of customers and users, the industry pressure is there. So this is a good way of starting thinking about it systematically and implementing it systematically. And the second thing is that this scheme gives you a way to actually demonstrate your compliance with this stuff. But if you carry out a review within your organization, you might find that you're actually, nearly there with being compliant. So assessing yourselves against requirements of a recognized standard gives yourself that assurance. It gives your stakeholders that assurance that, oh, look, I'm actually, better than competition. I'm a step ahead. So that's one. And where to start with implementation, again, I would consult with stakeholders. I would find a receptive customer. I would find a receptive tier 1 contractor if you're a tier 2. Yeah, and I would choose a pilot project and try to run it there. Yeah, that's where I would start.
Fabulous, thank you. And Chris, again, we sort of talked about the experience from other sectors, the aerospace journey that they went on. You talked about 30 years of experience there and how we're beginning this journey now. Is there any lessons there to be learned? Would there be anything you would add to that in terms of how people...
I touched on this on my final slide, really, about the feasibility of going out and doing what others have done, right? And yeah, right. I do mention we should look at other industries, but we can't fool ourselves into thinking that, oh, okay, perfect. They've got a perfect supply chain that follow this cascading of quality requirements, right? We're not there yet. But so during the validation of our guidelines, we went out there and we realized these are, again, stepping stones. We need to look at, if you're trying to implement the framework I just showed you with 34 elements across 5 phases, I mean, it's not realistic. But so what we did, we went and looked at the business needs. We looked at this impact on margins. We did gap analysis against their MPI program. We worked with our collaborators to really go on this journey. And what we saw is that even if me personally, I want to do the whole framework, I want to try it all, I was happy to do these segments, because what every single one of these journeys has led to is incorporation of more aspects of CPQP or of this assurance asset. While doing these processes, you realize that benefits, not just, the key is safety. The key is for us and the public to be assured or feel assured that what we're doing is the right, and then we're going to build a safer place to live or work. But it's also about how we taking that in steps, and that's what we've done. We've realized that this journey can work, but we just got to do it in steps. And when we do that, it leads to more adoption, and that's what we're seeing today. And this is all we can do. Like I said, is once everyone taking small steps together, and there you go, you're going to get your cultural change. You're going to get that shift in the industry. So yeah, I think we worked quite hard on implementation, and but it's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I guess, Geno, you touched on the tier 2 question that we've been asked. What's the relevance of a new standard to tier 2 supply organisations in UK construction? Do you see it being applied to any supplier working within a construction supply chain? Are there things that we could give the audience today just to sort of say, perhaps tier 1, but then beyond?
If I can start the short answer, what's the value for tier 2s and below? Massive value. Massive value. We all know the built assets, well, obviously are built out of components. The components are getting more and more complicated. We're looking at complex supply chains, right? And we all know that tier 1 contractors sometimes can be just merely an integrating contractor on site, and most of the work, including design, including testing, compatibility of different systems and design solutions, that's happening within the supply chain. Yeah. So the importance and the value of this standard for tier 2s and tier 3s is quite high. So if you are a tier 2 contractor, again, if you manage to pull it off, if you manage to get this implemented, get a certificate, your tier 1 clients will be really, really happy, because they will then be able to demonstrate that to their customers. So that's my short answer. The BS 99001 sets a lot of specific requirements in sections related to design and control of externally supplied products. So that's what I suggest we'll focus on.
Yeah, interestingly, lots of question about design in the comments. So yeah, that's clearly something that resonates with those thoughts. And John, I guess similar response to that with how you would feel that the supply chain would perhaps face up with 99001 in compliance.
We tried to make sure that was a consideration when it was being drafted, and to make sure the requirements, we kept getting pulled back. Actually, there was one particular person that whenever we'd come up with a statement and tried to draft that, what about the one-man band? And then we'd have to go back and have a rethink about the way we'd actually written stuff, because some of us working for larger organizations sometimes forget about the smaller organizations. We try to incorporate requirements, but we tried to word it and put it down in such a way that actually it was still applicable to smaller organizations. And in fact, some things we wanted to put in that came from the likes of a tier 1 contractor, we didn't put in, because the conversation was that actually, how does that apply to the smaller contractor, to the one-man band, to the organisation that only employs 3 or 4 people? And then suddenly realised, well, actually, no, you can't do that. So we decided that was one of our considerations in trying to do this. We're not saying what we've done is perfect, far from it, but it's a step forward from where we were. And hopefully, where I think the value will come in is when we develop in the development of a supporting document which is to say the working group has just started work on putting together an implementation guidance, because we can develop the implementation guidance specifically to smaller organisations, tier 2s, even
Yes.
tier 3s and suppliers. Yeah.
Yes. But just
At the
on
moment,
that, sorry, John, to cut you off, but just on that, because the question was asked in the chat about timeframes for developing these things. Bearing in mind, we're sort of talking about 99,001 taking upwards of 18 months to get from an idea to hitting the shelves. I guess the similar, perhaps a little bit less because the material is there to develop, but it would be a sort of 12-month, 18-month track for the first
it would be
follow-up.
12 to 18 months, yeah.
Yeah.
I would envisage. We'll try and do it quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people, I can see putting their names forward already to help us, much appreciated, as are all your questions. So if you put your email address in the chat, all of the chat content, the question content will be pulled out afterwards. We will answer as many as we can and follow up afterwards with an FAQ if we can. But if you want to send me anything, ian.richardson@bsigroup.com, I can pick up and pass that to our committee manager to invite you along to the meetings. And I guess I don't know if I'd call it an elephant in a room, but lots of questions about certification and accreditation, understanding what the process will look like. Where does UCAS play into this? Pretty certain the schemes are being developed by certification bodies as we speak. I know that certainly those pilot schemes are happening by the end of the year. I'm sure they will be there for people that wish to seek out third-party assurance. But do you have, John, any thoughts you'd like to add on the certification aspect here? Again, as also referenced it, come to you again, perhaps again in a moment if we have time.
All I would say is that a lot of the certification organisations have been quite interested, and the way it works with standards, the standards committee and the people that draft the standards aren't actually involved in the certification piece. We produce the standard that we think the industry needs or is looking for, and then the certification bodies will determine what schemes get put around that. There are all sorts of ideas floating at the moment about, I think Ian mentioned that right at the start of the presentation that it's been published today. You can buy the British Standard 99,001, and that is all of the enhanced clauses. But probably shouldn't say this, but you probably get more value out of buying the PD, which is the public document, because that has the ISO 9000 clause with the enhanced 99,000 requirements sat underneath it, so you can see read them together and see how it complements 9001 without taking any away from it. That is where we're going to. That's how it will be implemented. So that the schemes around certification, whether it's certified in its own right, whether it's a supplement to 9001, all of those things are for the certification bodies to work up schemes with UCAS. But just for your information,
yes,
UCAS have actually been consulted in the process of developing this standard, so they are fully aware of it, and so have the Association of British Certification Bodies and the Federation of Certification Bodies.
So yeah, so we'll maybe come back to the PD before we wrap up, just to help people understand the difference between those two documents and accessing them. Again, do you want to just?
Yeah, just a very quick addition. Yes, obviously there has been a consultation process where there have been conversations with potential certifying bodies who might have been interested. Again, as John said, we can't influence that for impartiality reasons, but I think I can quote a conversation that we had. These additional requirements will probably mean that certifying auditors will need to get upskilled and work on their competence, to which our response was, yes, please. Yeah. So that I think is one of the good outcomes of this scheme. And if that happens, we'll be delighted. But again, this will probably take a little bit of time for the certifying bodies to get accustomed and upskill their auditors as well.
I think our experience with new management system standards tells us that we talk about things like 45,001, the occupational health and safety standard, exactly the same route. 50,001, energy management system standard. It takes a bit of time for the schemes to follow on after the arrival of the standard itself, and then UCAS do the accreditation for certification bodies after that. But Chris, do you have any final thoughts on what we've discussed?
Yeah, in terms of accreditation, we can also look at other industries and see there are options available. In terms of CPQP specifically, it's still early days. We are actually launching the framework on the 10th of August, so that's when it will become publicly available on the CIH website with celebration. And I think there's definitely room to continue having these discussions. But I think the most important thing is that we are having these discussions, and there is merit in thinking about certification process. And for me, the whole verification and validation and third-party article, first article inspection, things like that. That's where we're having the right conversation. So that for me is
absolutely appreciate it. Thank you so much, and thank you to all. Also, I know there's a lot of committee members on the webinar this afternoon. On behalf of BSI, on behalf of myself, on behalf of John and the team, we thank you for what must be hundreds and hundreds of hours of time voluntarily put into this process to develop it, and to my colleague at BSI, Sally Swingewood, who managed that process impeccably as well. So thank you all for that. I think we have a sort of final slide just to help you in terms of thank you for attending. Yes, of course, thank you for coming along and listening to us, try and help. Of course, the standard is now published. John referenced that there are 2 products that are available from knowledge.bsigroup.com. BS 99001 only contains those requirements, specific requirements for the built environment sector. But the PD, the published document 99001, you will see it when you search for 99001 off that website, has a combined set of requirements in it. As we explained, it's all of the 9001 requirements, and then immediately following each of them, the respective 99001 requirements that are additional. So hopefully, as you obtain your copy and start to use it, you'll understand where all the thoughts from our committee members and their expertise have come from. These are experts in their field, and they've helped us develop what we hope is a first step on that journey. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to everybody. We wish you a hopefully cool afternoon, and please get in touch if you would like to follow any more of our events or get in touch with myself to learn more. Thank you so much. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye.